Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining me. We're very excited to be presenting today on the early eve of the launch of Victor and VideoEdge 5.0. So appreciate everyone's time and coming to hear what's coming and what's new. Now, before I get started, I want to make sure that we set a couple things straight that have been coming up on some of the earlier webinars. So this is a bit of a pre-launch announcement, but in terms of this webinar, but the intended software availability date is July 24th. So for anyone who's looking to get software, you may see a posting over the weekend. We'll release all of our software on Friday, but we are letting people know that effectively on Monday morning, on the 24th, all software updates and all the supporting materials should be available at that point. So I think that that's one order of business I want to make sure that people understand. And then the second one has to do around the upgrade path. So with Victor 5.0, this marks a major evolutionary step in the product. It's a major milestone, another major release. And in some instances, people have been asking about the upgrade path and wanting to understand if you're coming from version 4.x, what does that imply? So I just want to be clear and make sure we set the record straight on that. And that in terms of the upgrade path, as long as you have an active SSA, there is no problem for you to roll forward. There's no additional uplift part numbers, unlike some of our competitors who may take this opportunity to charge a major uplift price for going from a 4.x to 5.x. We're going to make this as part of our standard software upgrade path and available to all of our customers. Obviously, anyone coming in new, no real changes there. Whether our changes will come up and bring you up to date shortly, but there'll be minimal changes in terms of changes. So in that sense, it's kind of the same process as you do in 4.x. We want to make sure that everyone has this software. We feel 5.0 is probably the most important software release we've had to date, and we want to make sure everyone has it because we've never felt better about where the software is at. So let's go ahead and roll into the presentation. So I think the first thing to start to go over is what's new in the release. Now, if you haven't seen the user interface, here it is for the first time. Your first impressions may be that it is a bit of a dramatic change. It is not just a simple reskin, it is a brand new user interface. So we've gone through and at the top layer and the surface gone on and come up with a whole new interface for our software. We've increased the usability. We've improved the user experience. We've made it more intuitive. We've been able to reduce clicks. So it's a bit of maybe a bit of a dramatic change for some people who haven't seen it, but I'll make sure we get you a little bit more comfortable as we roll on with the presentation. But this is at a top level. Next slide is the same interface, but it's in a light theme. So one thing I want to point out is by default with Victor 5.0, when you install it, it will enable itself in a dark theme, but there's this light theme option. Now, the reason for that change is that we have heard from many customers who are in command center environments, right? We are typically used in active surveillance environments, and commonly there are command centers or video rooms with those, and those are typically dimly lit, darkly painted rooms, and having a bright user interface puts a lot of strain on the operator. So we've heard that feedback, and that was one reason for the change in the theme, at least. But we know we also heard back from people that the ribbon bar approach that we had used was not very popular, was not conducive to being very intuitive in some cases. And we even seen another model where it was used is Microsoft. With Microsoft Office, we saw them move away from the ribbon bar, right? So we know that they heard similar feedback. So we wanted to make a change and make it more intuitive. We found that there are certain areas of the UI that we could put together under certain areas of the navigation pane. That's the new structure on the left, is that navigation pane. We found if we grouped it with a little bit more of the common things together there, it was more intuitive. There was less clicks there. But there's some other improvements as well. Now, the dark theme does help ease strain on the eyes, but if you're in a typical cubicle environment, we have that light theme, or if it's just a matter of preference. We do hear from people go, oh, I don't like that color theme. So it just gives options as well. It also helps in terms of our client strategy in general help us start to drive some consistency, because there's been some consistency forming with our other clients. And in case you're not familiar with them, I'm talking about Victor Web, Victor Go, Video Edge Go, and Video Edge Client. They've already had a dark theme, and they've already had this navigation pane approach where there's a navigation pane on the left side, or at least in the case of the apps and the local client. So this now starts to give us a little bit more consistency with the UI. And what we'll do is, and this is in the future, this is the very few time of one of the few times we'll talk about the future, but in the future we'll be able to start to take these icons that we're using, now that we've settled on icons we know we've iterated on all these icons for a number of times, we're going to bring them back there. And that's going to help reduce that learning curve. So when an operator shifts from Victor Unified Client to one of those other clients, will be a little bit more natural how to get started. So it also lends itself there. Now I'll take a moment to actually flip to the client. I should go ahead and close a few things down here. Close my control panel for the presentation, and I'm going to close down the event viewer. All right, and I personally like to use the widescreen formats for my views. So we'll start from there. But this is the new user interface, if you haven't seen it, right? This is kind of your standard surveillance view, and I think how a lot of operators would leave their desktop. Now, as I mentioned, on the left side of the screen, you now have a navigation pane. With the navigation pane, with navigation pane, you have tooltips. I just want to check my dashboard and make sure everyone's seeing my view. All right, so you have tooltips. So if you're not familiar with these icons and they feel like they may not be too natural to you, you have tooltips. You just hover your mouse and you'll get a little bit of a helping hand there. Every now and then, though, in the earlier presentations, people may have noticed me click on the menu expander, and the menu expander adds those tooltip names, but to the right of the icon, right? So if you want to just leave it open as you get used to the new user interface, you can do that. I personally like to leave it collapsed, and I expand it when and if I need it. But and I just rely on the tooltips. At this point, these icons have become pretty intuitive for me, so I'm pretty much used to them. But one of the other areas that we've been able to save time, increase usability, is by remembering a couple things. So you'll notice that there are these little arrows next to the icon, and those are my most recent items. So I've been using the system quite a bit. I've been using it typically in a way that a guard would use the system. So you see that I use my surveillance area, my maps, my health dashboard, and my event viewer quite often. So it just remembers that and leaves them right at your fingertips. So it's another way to really get at things that you use most frequently the most. What we do find is that when we do observe operators using our system, we find that the typical operator doesn't use more than 4 or 5 items within the user interface that frequently. So why not just put them at their tooltips, put those at their fingertips? The other area would be if you're a system integrator and if you're adding NVRs a lot, right? So if you're adding NVRs a lot, that's the same thing also, you're just repeating. So why not put that right at your fingertips under new? So that's how we've been able to increase some of the usability, is by remembering those most frequently used items. All right, another way that we've been able to do it is by adding, adding filters. So there are filters so that if you go into any one of these areas of the navigation pane and just start typing, like maps, you see it filtered down to the word maps. Some of these these areas where the task boxes are very lengthy, right? So you can see the example of new. So rather than fish through the list for the item that you're looking for, just start typing, right? If you start typing, it will pull it right out, right? So use the filters. I actually learned this one from watching my own kid use a tablet, my own child, and I noticed that my child has so many apps on his tablet that rather than scroll through pages of the tablet to try to find his icon, he just pulls down and starts typing, and there's a filter in the iPad that will just bring that icon to you, right? So that's one of the ways I noticed to adapt basic usability principles that my own child seemed to figure out intuitively that I can use here to increase the usability of the user interface. So I think those are a couple good items to hit on. We'll flip back to the presentation. So I think I hit on a couple of these things. Now I will make sure that everyone gets a copy of the presentation. And the appendix of the presentation, I have a 20-page section that breaks out every icon, every area of the UI that's different, and gives an example like of this screen here, so that if anyone wants that extra level of help with understanding the user interface, we'll give you that in this presentation. But it's pretty simple, I think, the premise of starting with a navigation pane for all your navigation, and from there you see how easy it is to just use those areas of the UI now. Okay, another feature I want to go into a little bit is our PTZ control capabilities. So one thing we've seen from observing operators in command centers or hearing from customers who've been in very active event situations. So an event has occurred, there are Pentelsum cameras in the vicinity of the event. So naturally, staff is going to go, the guards are going to go look at those cameras to see what's going on. Some of them are supposed to be looking in some instances, and in some instances, some are not. And that's typically where we hear a lot of people have problems, is that there's some type of authority level in the command center of who's supposed to be looking at what, when. In other cases, they just haven't had that experience, and they haven't had the problem until communications break down, command breaks down in the command center, and you have multiple operators now pulling cameras in different directions. So for those type of instances, we've added two capabilities, right? One is a mechanism that allows us to create a queue, and in that queue, operators get to take turns, basically. There's a duration or timer associated with that, so when someone takes control and locks it, and takes that control, just say they have it for that duration. After that, the next operator can take control. Now, in addition or above that, what we have is the ability for an operator to lock the system in a way that unless someone who has equal or higher authority in the system comes in, they are going to have that control until it's released by them. So the idea is that if someone is a higher ranking officer or someone in the command center just has a high level of authority and needs to take that control, let's say an instance, the issue goes from something that is a local municipal level type of problem that raises up to the state or government level, and the government agencies want to come in and they want to be able to have that control over the cameras, right? They could then at that point lock the control of those cameras, and they will hold that until someone again of higher or equal authority comes in and takes control. So a really nice way of being able to get that get the chaos out of the command center when an event is occurring and when time matters, right? Because we've heard this in the worst of situations, including active shooter situations. So we want to make sure we let people know that we have this great feature set for anyone who has any PTZ or Pentel cameras and needs to have that level of access in place. Right, maybe the next feature I'll break back to doing a demo. So this is surveillance tracking. So surveillance tracking is a great feature, and the idea with surveillance tracking is we want to be able to give guards some type of mechanism to be able to track an operator, track a person or object that's suspicious through their cameras. So I think many people have seen the situation, maybe you even live in one of these situations where everyone in the security room knows every camera by heart. Anyone could yell at a camera number and everyone knows exactly where the camera is in the vicinity of the scene of the scene. But what do we do? What can we do is the challenge in instances where people don't know those cameras by heart. They don't know when someone who's walked through a doorway and they want to switch cameras to another camera, they don't know what that other camera is. So this is a feature that enables operators to be able to do that so that they don't lose that suspect while they're tracking. So let's go ahead and we'll go into the device lists. I got some recorders here that are already set up. So one thing I want to point out is in the very bottom of the screen, we have this icon here. Simply click on it and that enables the feature. So at this point, any icon, any camera view has an overlay in the image that allows me to navigate with the surveillance tracking will be present in the UI. Now these are manually configured, right? This is a great opportunity for anyone who installs and configures our systems to offer this as a value add for your customers, the configuration is for them. We'd like to see it configured on as many cameras as possible. So you go ahead and basically set up this arrow so that it links to the camera on the other side of the door. So in this situation, I've seen something that's suspicious that's occurred here in front of the doorway. The person who I'm looking at now travels through the doorway. Okay, I don't know the camera on the other side, but I simply click on this link and it'll take me to the camera on the other side. Well, if there was another camera facing on the parking lot, maybe I could have another camera that tracks them if they go that way. But let's say in this instance, the person goes back. Now I configured a link here that just goes right back because I have this camera view already set up with the link as well. But in addition, there's a return to the previous camera link here. So I could use either one in this instance, right? The person actually put something in their pocket, came back in, and then at this point, let's say law enforcement meets them at the doorway or security and stops them. Great. Now I was able to track that person as they move through the camera. Now, this is a very simple example, but it could be through the entire facility. You can use this as well in a live or recorded video if you're doing a forensic investigation and tracking someone through after the fact. So it's a great way to be able to use the system and, again, increase the usability, really make it a much better experience. Now, what happens when law enforcement did apprehend them? Let's say you now need to file this as an investigation. Well, that's great, no problem. Simply click on the button again here, the surveillance tracking button. You're going to get this menu that pops up, this dialog box. Simply click Save Clip, and click Save Clip. All right, and now you see the dialog box comes up so I can start saving this. And by the way, you'll notice all the cameras that I tracked that person through are listed here, and the video clips from that associated time frame is here. So in the background, Victor was doing you a favor and keeping note of exactly when you were tracking through the system. So if you've ever seen or observed in a command center, typically people who are working in the cameras, when they see something suspicious, have a notebook and they're taking notes down, the camera name, the time, because they know that later they may have to piece this investigation together. So not only did we save you time when you were trying to track that person to the field of view, but we saved you time and be able to export the all the evidence into a clip by taking those notes for you and simply providing it right here. So great time savings. Again, great usability enhancement. A couple other usability enhancements. Let's see. I'll bring up another camera here. Well, let me start with this one. So one thing you may have noticed already is that as I'm double-clicking on video objects, I'm not opening a new pane. If you're a power user of Victor, you may have had the experience that typically when you click or double-click on a video object, it opens up a new pane. So this was another thing we observed from watching our system operators, is that we were, by some people's feeling, we were instilling bad practice by letting an operator simply open up a new pane every time they just simply clicked on a video object, right? We assumed that operators would have best practices in mind and would be closing down these tabs, but we realized that we were hearing back from people that Victor was sometimes slow, and what we learned is that people just leaving too many tabs open. They knew that Victor in the background was closing down the video stream and saving you bandwidth, but they weren't keeping the overhead processing for the memory that takes to keep all that stuff open and just waiting for you in place. So what we did is we changed this behavior. So now what happens is that when I double click any video object, it opens up in the same pane. Now, if I wanted to open up that video object in another pane, in another tab, I can do that. I can click on the plus here, and there'll be an option for surveillance. And it remembers I do that all the time, so it brings it to my fingertips. I could do it that way. I could do it from the navigation pane here. That's fine. I could do it that way as well. What I like to do, though, is I like to simply hold Shift and double click on the video object. So I Shift and I double click on that NVR, and what you should see is another tab opens up, right? And that other tab has all my cameras on it. So great way for operators, if they want to explicitly be able to open up another tab, they have to do something to do that and not allow that kind of not good practice. Another cool feature that we have in terms of usability is being able to drag things around. Now, we've always had the ability to drag a tab over and float it off and dock it off to the side. You could float it off and dock it over to another monitor. You could have that open. You could have 4 monitors on your workstation and have them all open that way. What's really cool is this new feature is the ability to drag stuff around. So I think the easy example is, let me open up a guard view here, right? In a guard view situation, I think it's not uncommon. Oh, let me get a better camera view here. That whatever's in the big tile is probably an important thing. So let's say in this instance, my job is to really keep an eye on this back door and this loading dock area that's on the other side of it. But something suspicious happens of interest in this camera, the Celestra 610. We'll simply click on that, click and drag, and you're going to see the two cameras inverse. Now I can look at the what was a very small thumbnail tile, maybe even a very small thumbnail tile, in my bigger camera view, and I can see what's going on there. You know, and by the way, maybe that's not all that cool, because I've seen a lot of competitive product that can do that. But we're not limited in this workspace with Victor 5.0. You can actually drag these objects from any tab to any tab, right? So if it's multiple tabs open on different monitors, like I said, you could drag it across monitors, right? So, and you'll notice that everything should inverse, right? So a really nice way of increasing usability there. Another cool feature is the ability to digital zoom now, just by pressing Shift and clicking on the image. Let's try that again. Try to open up a camera view here. Somehow I'm not doing that right, but let's go ahead and flip back here. So we have this new capability for being able to virtually pan, tilt, and zoom within the Victor interface. So simply shift and drag, and you'll be able to draw a box. That box is going to allow you to snap into the digital zoom mode. And from there, you can simply scroll your mouse button, detent forward once, and the camera will just start to zoom once, and then detent back once, and it will stop, or start one more time, and it will start to zoom back out. Right now, if you're doing that over your picture-in-picture window, what that allows you to do is now start to use the system in a way that's very close to what you get with a mechanical pan, tilt, zoom control keyboard, right? So from the touch of a mouse. So it's that combination of being able to detent forward, detent backwards, and drag the picture-in-picture window, and you'll be able to digitally pan, tilt, and zoom, or virtually pan, tilt, and zoom within your high megapixel cameras right from Victor. Now in the future, we'll look to see if we can add that same drag and snap to functionality in the pan, tilt, zoom cameras, but we're happy to say that we have it in the fixed cameras, and again, a great another usability enhancement. So see, I was trying to hit off on a number of these items in my demo just then. So I hit the recently used items, the pane dragging, and the surveillance reuse. So we'll just keep rolling forward. I already demonstrated this, so this was a simulation of the pane dragging. So license plate recognition. So let's talk about license plate recognition. So we're very excited about this one as well. The next two features in general in terms of analytics are, I think, the most commonly requested analytics when I see project specifications out there. I guess if anything, well, this is probably overdue, but we're happy to say we finally have license plate recognition available within the Victor and VideoEdge portfolio. As our other analytics, the actual engine for this runs within the VideoEdge software. One thing I want to point out is that it is a separately licensed feature, right? It is sold separately. So what I'm saying there is if you own a VideoEdge NVR, and you already have a license for analytics, you will not see this just appear on the list, right? This would need to be licensed separately, but similar to our other analytics, it is licensed on a per camera basis. There's no extra server that's needed, right? You can simply add these to your NVR. Depending on the NVR, you can support anywhere from 2 or possibly up to 4 channels of these. There's always the consideration of how much load is are in that NVR. If you're designing the system from scratch, it's easy to design to accommodate this load. But if you're trying to add it to an NVR that has already been deployed or upgrade a system that's out there, you probably want to look at what the load and the configuration is before just adding it. But you can add this with just a simple license. At that point, the license plate recognition engine will just start cataloging or recording every license plate it sees into metadata. So for the basic functionality here, you don't have to actually enroll or enlist anything. There's no enrollment database. Just turn on the feature, and it will start to catalog all the license plates it sees into the metadata base. Now, in terms of its ability to do that, the engine is very, very fast, right? It can handle vehicles at a great speed. But we want to make sure we give proper guidance and stand behind where we say we can perform. And what we're going to do is enter into this market starting with the applications that is typically referred to as stop and go or access control. Right? Basically, in the license plate recognition world, there's three applications. There's the one that I just described now, there's city surveillance, and there's high-speed tolling. We're not looking at high-speed tolling or city surveillance. So we're looking at stop and go or access control applications. What that typically implies is speeds that are less than 20 or 30 miles an hour, right? Because when you get to city surveillance, now you're at 20 or 30 miles an hour. But you can imagine if it's a university or a hospital campus and there's a driveway, people may be doing that speed, right? Up to 20, 30 miles an hour. What we'd like it to be is under that speed, and we want the camera to be staged in a very specific position. So we don't want to encourage people to use standard surveillance views. We want to make sure that we have a camera that's staged for license plate recognition, right? Preferably looking 0 degrees right at the camera, at the license plate. So probably installed about hip height. But the engine will tolerate up to 20 degrees from zero, from the center, right? We want to make sure it's under that speed, and we want to make sure that we're using a camera that's complementary to the engine. Now, we're not releasing a specific camera with license plate recognition. What we've qualified it against is the Illustra bullet camera, right? And we're getting good performance out of that. We're also getting good performance out of the Illustra 2 megapixel dome. One of the things that is working well for us in those cameras is the fact that it has a very high shutter speed. So that's another hint as to what you need is a camera with high shutter speed and probably something with high wide dynamic range because you have headlights looking at it, right? But if you do that, if it's after in low light, use best practices for IR illuminators. If you have experience installing these, I think you're probably familiar with some of these things. And then the last thing is making sure we have the proper pixels on target. So as long as we have enough pixels on target, our engine likes about, if I specify in width, about 80 pixels per foot, right? But we'll give you best practices guides on how to know all these little details. So don't have to worry about taking them all down in shorthand. We'll put out a best practices guide that describes all of this. All right. Now, in terms of use cases, there are two use cases. So I mentioned that as long as you set up your camera this way, you turn on the license, it's going to start cataloging every license plate it sees. So let's say now you're at the hospital, you're in the security room, you work in the security room. You have one parking lot camera looking at your employee lot and the main driveway there and the choke point there, another one on your guest or patient lot, and you hear from someone that they've seen someone hit a car and take off, right? So they might have written down some license plate. Well, great, you have a camera staged for it. Let's go do a forensic search on that rather than combing through every car that passed through the driveway today. So you do your search, and if you got if the person wrote down a license plate well, then bang, you got your result, and you save yourself a lot of time. Let's say in this instance, someone didn't get a license plate. They only knew half the characters, partial license plates. Well, great, no problem. Use question marks, use asterisks as needed, and we'll be able to return results to you that way as well. All right. Let's say you've done both of those and you're still not getting results. Maybe they did have all the characters of the license plate written down, but we're humans. We make mistakes, right? That typically happens in emergency events. So maybe in this case, the person misread the license plate and they wrote down 0 when it was really a Q. Well, no problem. Run that search again. Turn on the fuzzy match option this time. Now what we'll do is we're going to turn a broader list of results where in any instance where you wrote down that it was a 0, but we see a D, an O, or a Q in that place, we'll return that result to you. And by the way, VideoEdge has a whole map of all these characters, all these letters and numbers that we could mistake as humans. And when you enable the fuzzy match, it's going to leverage that to look through all the catalog it has and return you back that result. So now that third instance of that search, you click through your result list, you play your next clip, and bang. Now you have the make and model of the vehicle that the person reported seeing with their license plate. You found the video. You can find all the video from that point forward, and you have a nice little incident and case folder enough media or video to start your case in your incident folder. Now, the other use case is real-time alarms. Now, real-time alarms do require you to enroll the license plate into the system, right? You can set up a good guy list or bad guy list, if you will, within the software, and you can start to notify operators real-time through the event viewer of occurrences of those license plates being seen, right? And I think there's some natural examples if you're retail and you have high-value customers. We've heard healthcare who have patients who are coming for therapy and just want to increase service levels there. And then there's always the example of the banned guest or some staff member who was terminated in a poor way, and maybe there's some concerns about that person coming back. I don't know if there's any questions on LPR, but feel free to shoot them in. We can take them now, or we can keep rolling. All right, so the next analytic rule is a rule. It's not an engine, right? So I mentioned that license plate recognition was a new engine, and it's another engine in the portfolio, and it was licensed separately, but this one is not. Perimeter is actually a rule that's part of the video intelligence portfolio. So if you're not familiar with the video intelligence portfolio, this is the portfolio of analytics that we offer with a single license, and with that, you get a whole set of rules like enter, exit, dwell, linger, queue, crowd formation, object abandoned, removed, direction detection. I think that's the whole list. So now we have, as part of that package, perimeter. So what I'm saying there is, if you purchased those analytics from in the past, if you bought a license from us in the past, and you upgrade to 5.0, you're going to see perimeter on that list, right? So that's one thing I want to point out first off is that it's part of that family. Again, it's purchased as part of that family as on a per camera basis. The functionality itself, though, for perimeter is pretty self-explanatory. We're going to be able to automate that the detection of people or things approaching a boundary that you set with cameras that visually monitor a perimeter for you. Now, in terms of being able to monitor that, we can automate two things. Clearly, the breach of the perimeter, right? You have a tripwire kind of set, a virtual tripwire, and we can tell when that has been tripped. But the other thing that we can do is we can let you know that someone's just approaching the perimeter as well. So if you want to do that, you can go ahead and set a boundary where there's a alarm triggered if someone's just approaching. So, and if you followed our analytics in the past, outdoor analytics were not something that we offered, at least as a native rule. People apply them that way, but there's a evolutionary jump of our engine that needed to happen here for us to start bringing forward a rule that we felt that we could promote for outdoor perimeter type applications. So we've tuned our code a little bit more. We're using higher resolution than the past to get those farther distances. Our engine's a little bit smarter in terms of being able to ignore things that may create false alarms than in the past. So that's where we got this confidence that we now have a rule that we can offer called perimeter to the marketplace. So I think that is good coverage of that. Next feature is a feature called Trickle Store. So Trickle Store is a feature that leverages the Alestra 2, 3, or 5 megapixel cameras with its latest firmware, and VideoEdge NVRs with 5.0. Now, the only other piece that you need, or the other ingredient that you need for this, is just an SD card. Right? So I think this is a really common type application for a lot of our customers. In this case, if you've already purchased these hardware bits, all you have to do is get the latest firmware, and you'll be able to take advantage of this feature. It's a standard feature in the system. What the feature is a low-cost way to provide redundancy in the Victor and VideoEdge solution. You may have seen competitors that have a feature like this. One of our differentiators with this feature is there's a level of intelligence to it. And the level of intelligence that we've added to it actually helps save the life of, or lightens the duty cycle on that SD card. I should say extends the life of it. What we're doing is a little bit standard, at least I think for the most part at the beginning here. But let me describe how this works, and I'll tell you where we get a little bit different. So the picture here on the right kind of depicts your typical type of scenario. We have an Alestra camera or an IP camera that streams to an NVR, and the NVRs record the video. Well, that's great. But what happens when communications break down? Well, in the case of this feature, if you have the feature enabled, what it will do is it will monitor the state of the communications of that connection. So, and it's specifically set up to monitor, the VideoEdge NVR. And when the communications have gone down, what it will do then is take the video and reroute it to the SD card. Now, not only just the video from that point is going to roll to the SD card, but all cameras have a little bit of memory in them, right? It's not something most people promote because it's not usable in many instances, except for this one. Because what we'll do is actually we know when that communication broke down started, we'll dip into that memory and grab that and pull it into the SD card. So what that allows us to do now is have pretty much all the video with very little downtime or any downtime, at least what we can see in our QA labs, and have it routed to the SD card. And then after that, once the communications are resumed, we'll return the video back to the NVR. Now, what we typically see in most type of communication brownouts like that is that they're intermittent, right? Maybe it's a WAN connection. The video's traversing back across a VPN or something to somewhere else using the public internet, and there was an interruption in service because of that. But whatever the case may be, sometimes it's uncommon to see it be intermittent. So what will happen is the Lustro camera will actually monitor for that. And if it does appear to be intermittent, what it will do is it will wait, and it will wait until it feels like communications are rock solid. And then at that point, it will then return the video back. And then in terms of how fast or slow it returns it, it's really based on a number of factors. One, how heavy the video is. The video may be of several days. It could be high megapixel video, high frame rate video, we don't know. And it may be over a very lean internet connection. I don't think that that's the important piece, because the important piece is just that when an operator or an investigator goes back to look for video, when an event has occurred and you might have been having a communications breakdown at some point for whatever reason, that the video is there. And that's what this will do for you, right? That's the actual benefit. All right, next feature has, I think has been a bit weighted as well. This is a feature that we brought to your fingertips. It's been in Victor for some time, but for people who've been using Victor for some time, we used to have this concept of light bulbs in our device list. Now the problem is we had to remove the light bulbs. The light bulbs weren't always accurately reflecting the state of the system, and we felt that was bad practice. So once we realized that the underlying issue was with some code that couldn't be resolved, we looked at how else we could fix it, right? And this is what we're starting to do, is make a couple different ways within the system to give you that information readily available at your fingertips, and have it be just as informative, if not more informative than the past. So right now, we have in our way in Victor 5.0 a way to right-click within your device list and generate dynamic views. And those dynamic views have all that health status or informational status about the state of the camera, right? In the past, those light bulbs were just pulling the camera intermittently, or not intermittently, but on an interval, I should say. So you can get just as accurate, up-to-date information from right-clicking in the device list and showing all on the health. What it's going to give you is a nice little view that looks like this. So you're going to have a bit of what I'll call a table. It kind of looks like a report. Again, this is a dynamic view. It's something we've already had, but wasn't as canned and at your fingertips. And from here, you'll notice that there's an Excel icon on the screen too. So if you want to tap there and say this is a report, you can do that. And we added a couple more layers of information because we did, again, want to take the opportunity to increase the amount of value that this has over the old light bulb mechanism. So here we can give you a way to start getting your firmware of all your devices here, and then you see clearly the camera recording state as well, so you know if it's recording as well as online. So you're getting very detailed status, much richer than we had available just by giving you a light bulb that showed you at a certain interval that the camera may or not have been online. So hope people like that feature. Another usability enhancement. This came out in a maintenance release before 5.0, but just want to make an opportunity to plug this. But this is a way to add standing operating procedures or SOPs to your events, so that when an event comes into the event viewer, if you want to have that attached as either PDF or as an HTML document, you can do that. We've observed in command centers when there's an event occurring that sometimes operators need to go to these 3-ring binders to find the standing operating procedure for handling that event. Well, we thought, well, gee, that's a great area that we can save time, so why not have them attached to the event and make them available right there. So that's what you see under the actions. We've added the ability to display or sort your list chronologically as well as by priority. We've added a button that shows the source time of the alarm. This is another one where we saw in alarm command centers, people monitoring alarms, and they had to look up a clock whenever they were looking at monitoring an alarm that came from a different region or a different time zone. So we thought, why not add a button that does that so operators can keep their eye on the UI. And then the other button here removes all the health statistics. Again, we want to make sure you get that camera information as quick as possible if a camera's offline, but we also realize that not all operators are in charge of seeing that level of information. So we've added some buttons here and some filter buttons that allow you to filter down the user interface so that you can give that guard or that operator just the alarms that they're tasked with handling. Right? Another great way of enhancing usability. All right, so there's a list of general items here. I won't read off all of these, but I think the top one is the one that I think I've heard people asking for a number of years, but the ability to have a visual overlay on the user interface so that when a motion alarm is tripped or an analytic alarm is tripped, the operator will know exactly where in that camera's field of view that rule was broken, right? So if it's a license plate camera, let's say, that's pretty easy. If you have a license plate that's loaded in the system as a bad guy and that car drives through, right, we're going to put a little box over the license plate so you know that's the car, right? But if it's a person who went the wrong way, we're going to be able to put a box on that object as well, right? So we're going to start helping you there. So that's a great one. Some new Video Edge only features that I want to cover is the Startup Wizard. So we've added to the Startup Wizard a step right up front that tells you what the current version of the software on the NVR is, and a reboot button right there, right? So that the idea is you can reboot the NVR and reload another factory image. So not everyone has noticed that we do sell our USB media separately. So if you're a system integrator that's on the line and you have a customer that is standardized on a specific version of Video Edge and it's not 5.0, well, that's fine. Just order that USB stick along with that NVR. And when the NVR powers up for the first time, it's going to prompt the operator that it's 5.0. Are you sure that this is the version you want to be running on? And that's the cue for the, the installer to take that USB, plug it in, and click the reboot button. What that's going to do is reboot the system and load that USB stick with that factory image on it. So now it's the version of Video Edge that they're supposed to have installed on the box right from the get-go. So that really makes that much easier for the system integrator. We have some load balancing features as well, where we've automated the discovery of drives in Video Edge, so you don't have to go to the command line or the SUSE Linux operating system. You can do it right within Video Edge. And by the way, we're going to load balance that for you as well. So let's say you've dispersed your cameras in a way that's unevenly distributed to your NVR's hard drives. Well, that's fine. We have a button that will take a quick little analysis of that and then adjust that load. Now, so that's a great little feature. So now what that allows system integrators to do is actually set up their system in a way that's much faster, where they don't have to think about distributing the load up front. Just add your cameras to the system as needed as you're going through your setup, and then go through and do the load balance last, and that will spread that load out evenly across all of your disks and give you the performance that you need to maintain that level of cameras that you have in your system. Right. The last bullet, I'll flip to the next slide. This is a very important one to cover up because this is a licensing change, right? I mentioned that there wasn't a lot of changes. I told you that license plate recognition would be one of them. This is the other one, right? So Video Edge 5.0 onwards, we're no longer going to be including the 4 no-charge camera licenses, right? So for those of you who may not be familiar with this, in the past we used to include a 4-camera license with all Video Edge NVRs. But since we instituted that, and for even a little while now, we've had a promotion where we allow Aluster Pro cameras to be connected without a license. So basically, we're going to discontinue the 4 free camera licenses in Video Edge 5.0, but we'll continue to allow the Aluster Pro cameras to be connected at no charge. Actually, we're looking to automate that as well. We weren't able to finish that in this release, so I said I was not going to be talking much about next releases and promising, but we've written a lot of code there, so we'll make that easier in the future. That was kind of part of the trade-off there, and making it easier for people is, rather than including 4 manual licenses, let's just automate the Pro free licenses and make a lot of life easier for folks. So I want to let people know that that's the case, right? For anyone who may have any systems out there that are any integrators who've quoted or have any systems that any orders that haven't come in yet, right? We'll go ahead, work with your salespeople. We'll see what we can do to honor how it was quoted. Those quotes should stand, because we always put basically an expiration date on those. So we'll make sure that you're covered there. But I just want to make sure people understand that any new orders moving forward after the launch date that haven't had an exception made for them will not include those 4 free licenses, and that will be the way things work moving forward with 5.0. So unless there are any questions there, we'll go ahead and rolling on. So Victor Web, we've made some updates, right? So there's some more investment there. We've added a feature that supports the spot monitor output. So if that's a hybrid NVR, we'll be able to manage those right from Victor Web. So if you don't want to use a local client, if you like Victor Web and you want to be able to manage the spot monitor output, you can do that now. We're bringing the text streaming into the Victor Web interface as well. This is specifically Victor Web, not Victor Web LT, but if you're using Victor Web, that implies that you're integrated to your Victor application server. And if you've configured site lists in your Victor application server and you log in, you're going to be able to get those now. You can import those, right? You can configure monitor tours now from Victor Web. We have the search features. We should have perimeter as well on there. We've updated the search for analytics to include LPR and perimeter. And then the last piece is localization. So I got a slide for that as well. So when we launched Victor Web, apologize for anyone in non-English speaking regions, but we had to make a business decision there because of costs, that we had to enter the market with English only. We promised we'd have international language support coming shortly after, and weren't able to deliver on that till just now. So apologies that it took some time, but we've now started to improve our position there. You see French, German, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese added to the user interface. And if there are any other languages that we need to be considering, please let us know. Funnel those through your sales team. But the nice thing is we have localizations for different parts of the world now starting to come in here. Now, Unified, I think, is important to note as well. So we'll talk about Victor Unified for a moment. So 5.0 unifies with Secure 2.6.1. We've added some new features for Unified as well. First thing, I guess, and this is just maybe a general item as well, which is Windows Server 2016 support. Right, so we have officially declared support for Windows 2016. Now, for anyone who may have a very mixed environment and may have some exact recorders in there, we are supporting exact recorders that have the exact I/O board, and with our integration with Secure, we've enabled personnel views. So for anyone who has personnel tailored and Secure 9000 with personal customized views for their operators, we'll be able to support those. And then we've added a little bit more of a deeper unification with our scheduling. So we have the Secure schedules, the holiday schedules, and some other schedule updates and the unification. So we'll move on, talk about integration updates. So we have a couple of integration updates. In the case of LPAS, Commend, and TOA, those integrations we already had, and we've expanded or upgraded those to incorporate some new hardware. So with any integrations that we've written within security products, we always make it a goal within 2 weeks of launch to have all those posted to the website, and we've pretty much hit that, I think, over the last 4 years successfully. So this is those type of maintenance updates. These are adding new hardware platforms. So I just wanted to expand on that. I won't go into the details there, but we'll have that covered in the appendix as well if you want that information when you get the presentation, or we can get you release notes that cover that. But the one on the top line is shooter detection systems. So we announced this last month. We had a webinar series around it. They were very highly attended, some of the most highly attended we've had so far to date. I think it speaks to how much this problem resonates with everyone in the world. The active shooter situation is becoming, unfortunately, more and more common. Now, this gunshot analytic from shooter detection systems actually is intended for indoor applications. So this, think about the worst of the worst type of indoor applications, right? Your universities, your airports, things of that nature, high-value targets. And what this system does is it can identify gunshot detection using an acoustic signature, and as well as a visual signature from light waves that are invisible to the human eye. When the sensor senses that combination, it understands that's a gunshot. It will triangulate where it is from using a number of these sensors, and then from there be able to activate a indicator on the Victor maps, right, that blinks and lets you know where. Now, what it's really indicating is where the sensor is that detected the gunshot. I want to be clear there, right? It's just a sensor, so it'll enunciate the sensor on our map, and then you'll know that there's an active shooter situation there. From there, you can have automated pop-up of video, so you see what's going on. You have visual verification of the alarm. You have better situational awareness, right? So this is a very, very powerful feature that addresses a terrible real-world problem that we're seeing today in a very sophisticated way. All right, I think that's it in terms of big feature highlights. We're almost at the end here. I just want to hit on a couple of things in terms of marketing material. We have a whole set of collateral that we're releasing. We're actually going to be refreshing our collateral this year and actually speaking more to our end customer audiences. So anyone who's an end customer who may be on the line and wants to see our system information conveyed to you in a way that's more direct to your business, to your real world problems. You're going to see that change in our marketing material, but we'll have, in addition to that, all of our standard collateral then to go a refresh. We're going to have a very active digital campaign with this release. Expect to see in the next few months a campaign geared around social media, where we're encouraging people to take pictures and submit them. and we'll have some rewards around that and some incentives around that. But we're going to get very creative with this release and promoting 5.0 because it is such a major milestone for us. So a couple things in summary and closing. I want to make sure I don't miss out on plugging the fact that Victor and VideoEdge are now on its 5th generation. Anyone who talks to technologists understands, or if you're a technologist, understand what that implies. Right, we've gone through this great evolutionary journey of being a market catch-up player and evolving to integrating a bunch of different bits that we've built or purchased through acquisition in the marketplace into this great fine solution. We've never been proud of where it's at, and that's due to the fact that we've rounded a lot of the edges off of Victor and VideoEdge. Right, we've been able to refactor our code, we upgraded VideoEdge to the latest SUSE operating system in our last release. Now you're seeing this transformation in Victor. So we're now in what we like to say is our 5th generation of this code, and we've never felt more confident about it in general. So I want to make sure people hear that we're now in 5th generation and very proud of where we're at. We've redesigned the user interface. It is not a reskin. This is a full redesign. It's a new user interface that encompasses many usability enhancements. So we're very excited about that. You heard about this great solution opportunity for anyone out there who's already made an investment in Victor and VideoEdge and Illustra cameras. For anyone who's unsure about what cameras to go in the future, I think this is another compelling reason to look at an Illustra camera when using VideoEdge. Right, we have the analytics in the camera now. We've been able to add this. Right, I think people are seeing this great story. Right, anyone who's made an investment in the Illustra Pro cameras and how this platform we built is just bringing more and more value forward to customers. And the last piece that I want to hit on is the analytics. Right, the fact that we have this perimeter detection rule is tremendous, and license plate recognition, I think, has been something that's been long awaited. So please promote the license plate recognition, and if you have any opportunities out there, just let us know. We'd love to come and consult you on them. The last thing I'm going to do is have a bit of a call to action here. My call to action is going to be to ask you to go out and start getting all the information that you need to get together, to be able to go to your managers, to go to your bosses and ask them for approval to go buy a 1U VideoEdge 1U demo unit. The units are not available yet, but they're going to be available very, very shortly. So I want to make sure everyone has all their managers' approvals to get one of these things. I know I just got one. I've been using it at home. It's a great little NVR. If you're not familiar with it, we had our launch webinars a couple weeks ago, right? And with the launch webinars, we talked about the fact that it has this built-in power Ethernet switch that simplifies the ordering of your system. You don't have to add a PoE switch to your bill of materials. 2, it just makes it easier because you can plug your cameras directly in and they power up, right? 3, we have these nice forward-facing drives that makes it very easy to service. But in addition to that, we've included a solid state drive internally where the operating system resides. So that really speaks to its durability and duty cycle, right? This NVR should stand up to quite a bit with a solid state drive. And then we've included a security bezel, right? Cybersecurity is very important to us. One of the things we hear from people who are cybersecurity minded is, can we put bezels on these units that have forward-facing drives so we can prevent access to them or the power blinds? So we've included a forward-facing, a secure bezel on this, just like our big rack mount server, right? That's something we're starting to implement in the line. We've added that as a security measure. So really well-packaged appliance, perfectly suited for, I say, small to medium-sized footprint applications with up to 16 cameras. It does support up to 32, but I think its sweet spot is right around there. But for anyone who has up to 32 cameras, again, great solution, and I think that this is going to do very, very well as a complement to our line. So I guess with that, I'm going to go ahead and ask if there are any other questions. I have not seen a lot of questions roll through here. I know we still have a number of people online, so if you have any questions, feel free to shoot them now, and we'll go ahead and wrap up. Okay, I think with that, there's a question here around the support for LPR in terms of countries. So with our best practices guide, we will have a country list and on our data sheet. The country list is quite extensive. In some countries or in some area of the world, state or province makes a difference, or what I'm trying to say is some within certain countries, there are regions that have different plates. So please take a look at that list because that is going to be important. But I will say we have all the continents covered. We have most of the countries that we do business in covered. The other thing is if there's a country that is not supported, we're still going through the list. The engine is capable of doing a lot more than what we've enabled in that initial list. So let us know, and we'll just we can prioritize testing those next so that we can get those added to the list. But the list of countries, states, and provinces that are supported are there. In some countries, they have multiple plates. So let's say Europe, in the UK, they're multiple. So there's even an option for Europe multi-plate, United States multi-plate. But then to add accuracy or increase accuracy, you can choose individual states within those, I'll say within the European Union or within the United States. Or I'm trying to remember, there's another one as well. I think in the Middle East, possibly, where there's a multi-nation plate that's covered. But anyways, the short answer is take a look at the data sheet. We'll specify the countries and the states there very clearly. And again, please don't let that be a limiting factor because we have a lot of states that we're going to be enabling just in the next release. And we may be able to help you with some pre-release update because we can update the states manually. So please just let us know if there's a state that you have to have. All right, Marco. So if there's any other questions, I'll give it just another minute because I know we do have another 2 minutes. Or not. So why don't we go ahead and wrap it up then. So if anyone has any other questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly. I appreciate everyone's time. We definitely are very excited about this evolutionary jump. Please look for software on Monday the 24th. Download, start playing. Tell everyone you know about our new great 5.0 software we're so excited about. And please go ahead and order one new demo units that you can test our new 5.0 software against. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day or good morning, depending on where you're in the world. And thanks for attending.